surprised? Oh, one of the phones? He has these back with,
Yeah, he's back. He's here.
and that the new issue is coming.
It's still on the way.
I know.
It's going to take the late on 3 months. A week.
And it'll be for Christmas present.
See, there's a little mauve coordination here. Yeah. It's in the the lanyard and the. Yeah, you. Edie, welcome back. Did you go to the? All right. Betul, welcome. Lam. All right, good afternoon. Before we head to Syria, I'm going to stay in this hemisphere, and I have a statement from the Secretary General on Haiti. The Secretary General strongly condemns the continued gang violence and the loss of life in Haiti, where an armed gang is reported to have killed at least 184 people, including 127 elderly men and women between the 6th and the 8th of December in the Wharf Jérémie neighborhood in Cité Soleil in the capital Port-au-Prince. The Secretary General expresses his deepest sympathy and condolences to the families of the victims of this horrific act. The Secretary General calls on the Haitian authorities to conduct a thorough investigation and ensure that perpetrators to these and all other human rights abuses and violations are brought to justice. The Secretary General reiterates once again his pressing call to member states to provide the multinational security support mission, the financial and the logistical support required to successfully assist the Haitian National Police in addressing gang violence. He also calls on all Haitian stakeholders to accelerate progress in the political transition. And just staying in the Western Hemisphere on Venezuela, I just want to say that the Secretary General is aware of reports of raids by Venezuelan security personnel on buildings around the Argentine embassy in Caracas. The Secretary General recalls the principle of inviolability of diplomatic and consular premises. This principle must be respected in all cases in accordance with international law. Any violation of this principle would jeopardize the pursuit of normal international relations, which are critical to the advancement of cooperation between states. Turning to Syria, I think you all saw the statement the Secretary General issued yesterday, in which he said after 14 years of brutal war and the fall of the dictatorial regime, the people of Syria can seize an historic opportunity to build a stable and peaceful future. There is much work to be done to ensure an orderly political transition to renewed institutions, he added, and reiterated his call for calm and avoiding violence at this sensitive time. He also stressed that the support of the international community is needed to ensure that any political transition is inclusive and comprehensive and that it meets the legitimate aspirations of the Syrian people. He also added that Syrian sovereignty, unity and independence and territorial integrity must be restored. The Secretary General underscored that the United Nations remain committed to helping Syrians build a country where reconciliation, where justice, and where freedom and prosperity are shared realities for all Syrians. For his part, our Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, is currently back in Geneva, continuing discussions with key international actors. He's scheduled to brief the Security Council by VTC this afternoon at 3 p.m. in close consultations. The Undersecretary General for Peace Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, will also be briefing the Council at that time, also by VTC. Over the weekend, Mr. Pedersen issued statements which we shared with you on the events in Syria, and highlighting his engagement in Doha with relevant stakeholders. Further details regarding forthcoming convenings in Geneva will be shared by Mr. Pedersen's office as they happen and in due course. On the humanitarian front in Syria, our colleagues tell us that more than 16 million people already require humanitarian assistance in Syria, which is a huge proportion of the population that remains. And as the situation continues to unfold, OCHA says there is an urgent need for more shelter, food, and sanitation facilities. According to our partners, since November 28th, and as of yesterday, Some 1 million people, mostly women and children, have been displaced, particularly from Aleppo, from Hama, Homs, and Idlib governorates. It's important to note that the situation is very fluid, with reports of more people returning in the last couple of days. Transportation routes have been disrupted, limiting movements of people and goods, as well, of course, as the delivery of humanitarian aid. Some looting of civilian properties and factories, as well as warehouses holding humanitarian supplies, have been reported. Despite the challenges and the volatile situation, we and our partners continue to provide emergency aid. In northwest Syria, all humanitarian organizations in Idlib and northern Aleppo have resumed regular operations, and the 3 border crossings from Turkey used by us to deliver assistance to Syria have remained open. In the northeast, we are providing supplies for those who recently fled Aleppo, and in Aleppo, we are providing basic assistance, including food, health, nutrition services, and support access to clean water. On the health front, health facilities are overwhelmed, as one can imagine, with major hospitals operating at a limited capacity due to a shortage of staff, shortage of medicine, and a shortage of supplies. Our health partners continue to provide critical services in impacted areas, including by providing trauma kits. There are also deployed medical units and reception centers, and the school access across Raqqa, Tabqa, and Al-Hasake. UNICEF and UNFPA have deployed mobile teams and established fixed clinics in homes. In northwest Syria, all 24 health facilities that had suspended operations recently resumed services, though others remain non-functioning, including for lack of funding. Sufficient funding will be critical for us and our partners to scale up the response to meet the level of needs. The $4 billion humanitarian response plan is just over 30% funded, with just $1.3 billion received so far. It goes without saying that the needs, humanitarian needs, and the need for funding is just increasing as we speak. OCHA reiterates that the parties must facilitate safe and unimpeded humanitarian operations to reach people in need wherever they are. Turning to Lebanon, the UN Interim Force in Lebanon, our peacekeeping colleagues, UNIFIL, tell us that strikes by Israeli Defense Forces against what it stated were Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon over the weekend, with several fatalities reported, both Lebanese and IDF. There have also been reports that the IDF struck targets along the Lebanon-Syria border. UNIFIL once again calls on all parties to refrain from hostile actions. UNIFIL also tells us that the new monitoring mechanism envisaged under the cessation of hostilities agreement met today for the first time in Lebanon. We will be providing more details as we get them. As previously stated, the United Nations, including UNIFIL and the Office of the Special Coordinator for Lebanon, will support this mechanism and the cessation of hostilities within the mandate of Security Council Resolution 1701. And on the humanitarian front, our OCHA colleagues tell us they continue to closely monitor the movements of people. We also continue to support the humanitarian response, which is now focusing on meeting the needs of displaced people who have started to return to their communities, as well as those who remain displaced or still on the move, host communities, and those who remain in hard-to-reach areas throughout the conflict. The World Health Organization says that while the cessation of hostilities provides a much-needed respite, health needs in the country remain overwhelming. Health services have been severely impacted, with the widespread damage to water, sanitation, and municipal infrastructure heightening the risk of disease outbreak. Turning to Gaza, our colleagues with the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs inform us that in North Gaza Governorate, Israeli strikes and shelling have been reported in Beit Lahiya and Jabalia in recent days. The World Health Organization says that 33 people were reportedly killed just outside Kamal Adwan Hospital on Friday amid intense bombardment and hostilities nearby. You may remember the last week we reported the arrival of an emergency medical team at that hospital. That is the first such arrival in 60 days. Dr. Tedros, the Director General of WHO, confirmed that the deployed team had had to leave for safety as panic spread, with displaced people, caregivers, and many injured patients fleeing the hospital, which is one of the last lifelines for the people in northern Gaza. Vaccination coverage has now plummeted, leaving children vulnerable to preventable diseases, while thousands of individuals with life-changing trauma injuries urgently require reconstructive surgery. WHO and its partners continue to support the health response and the rehabilitation and reopening of hospitals. And for its part, UNICEF continues to address the needs of children and fatalities impacted by the ongoing crisis, including preventing family separation and reuniting identified unaccompanied children with their families. And WHO is also calling for urgent protection of healthcare facilities. Just to, I apologize, I got some pages. That last bit about UNICEF and vaccination was in fact about Lebanon due to the water issue. It's my bad. We'll correct it in the transcript. For its part, also remaining in Gaza, we and our humanitarian partners continue to face severe access constraints, particularly in efforts to access North Gaza Governorate, which had been under siege for more than 2 months. The Israeli authorities denied our request to carry out 3 humanitarian missions to the north today, and we were hoping to bring food and water back to Jabalia, to Beit Hanun and Beit Laia, where civilians are in desperate need of support. In the south, OCHA says that more than 80,000 human beings have returned to the Man and Bani Suhaila neighborhoods east of Khan Yunis over the past 7 months. That's what a rapid assessment mission found yesterday. Those returning have endured at least 4 rounds of displacement since May of this year, when the Israeli military operations in and around the Rafah area began. Many are living in severely damaged homes or makeshift shelters prone to collapse, especially in winter, with a significant water shortage due to the destruction of critical infrastructure. We and our humanitarian partners are mobilizing humanitarian assistance for people in these areas, despite critical supply shortages. Moving to Ukraine, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that recent days, the frontline regions of Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia have been the hardest hit, with attacks killing or injuring dozens of civilians, including children. That's what local authorities are telling us. Our humanitarian colleagues note that the homes and civilian infrastructures, including schools and gas pipelines, have also been damaged or destroyed, adding to the daily hardship for Ukrainians in those areas as the winter temperatures continue to drop. Aid workers are providing hot meals, drinks, and psychosocial support, as well as shelter kits and supplies to fix and repair homes. Humanitarian workers in Ukraine are increasingly concerned about disruptions to water and heating services in Donetsk, in Kharkiv, and in the Sunni areas. Repairs and winter support are urgently needed to help vulnerable populations this winter. Back here in the Security Council, Bintou Keita, the head of the UN Peacekeeping Mission for the Democratic Republic of Congo, briefed council members. She commended recent progress made in the Luanda process. She also welcomed the forthcoming summit organized by Angola on 15 December with the heads of states of the DRC and Rwanda. She told council members that this will be an opportunity to mark progress accomplished by the stabilization of Congo's east. However, Ms. Keita added that months since her last presentation to the council, members were marked by political tension around calls to revise the constitution and the continued escalating insecurity in North Kivu area. And as the council prepares to determine the peacekeeping mission's new mandate, Ms. Keita reiterated her commitment to a gradual and responsible disengagement of the mission. She said she and the DRC government and the peacekeeping mission are working jointly on a disengagement approach tailored to territorial security dynamics and civilian needs for protection. Her remarks were shared with you. Want to flag that tomorrow our humanitarian colleagues are organizing an event at 10 a.m., which is the annual high-level pledging conference for the Central Emergency Response Fund. That will take place. The pledging conference, which aims to raise funds for SURF next year, will feature a message from the Secretary General, as well as Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, who will deliver remarks and host the event. So far this year, SURF has allocated more than $550 million to support millions of people who need rapid life-saving assistance in 42 countries around the world. As conflict and climate shocks drive humanitarian needs around the world, it's critical that the international community scale up funding to ensure that SURF can continue to support the most vulnerable. In short answer, give cash, give money, and give a lot of it. The event will be live streamed. Today marks the 76th anniversary of the adoption of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. In his message, the Secretary General says this convention was adopted in the wake of the unimaginable horrors of the Holocaust. The convention is a pledge to the victims and survivors of genocide to ensure that these atrocities never occur again, adding that we must do everything possible to identify early warning signs and sound the alarm. Today is also International Anti-Corruption Day. The theme for this year is Uniting with Youth Against Corruption, Shaping Tomorrow's Integrity. Money for questions? No, sorry. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. A couple of questions on Syria. First, can we get an update on what's happening with UNDOF in the area that it's responsible for, given that the old Syrian government is not in power anymore? And secondly, you talked about the looting of warehouses. Where has this been taking place, and has any of it been in Damascus? And who from the UN is actually in Damascus, since you said Gar Peterson is in Geneva?
Yeah, our resident coordinator remains in Damascus, leading the UN team, not only in Damascus, but obviously providing leadership throughout the country. I will try to get you a bit more granularity of the reports of looting. In terms of UNDOF and its area of responsibility, the latest information we have today is that the situation remains calm. The UNDOF personnel remains in position, carrying out their mandated activity. What they have observed over the last few days is, one, unidentified armed individuals that have been manning checkpoints in the area of operations. And our UNDOF colleagues can also confirm that Israeli Defense Forces have entered the area of separation and have been moving within that area, where they remain in at least 3 locations throughout the area of separation. The IDF did inform UNDOF that it would enter that area as, quote, a temporary defensive measure to, and I quote, prevent it from being occupied by non-state armed groups. And the Israelis also told our UNDOF colleagues that it reserved the right to take any action against any threat against the state of Israel. For our part, the peacekeepers at UNDOF informed the Israeli counterparts that these actions would constitute a violation of the 1974 disengagement agreement, that there should be no military forces or activities in the area of separation, and Israel and Syria must continue to uphold the terms of that 1974 agreement and preserve stability in the Golan.
And a quick follow-up. These unidentified armed men were, I assume, were on the Syrian
Yes, they
side?
were, exactly. Betul and then Pam.
Thank you, Steph. It's been a while since I last asked you a question from this room, so bear with me. I've got quite a few.
I hope they're not from the time you've been missing,
no.
And they're all relevant today.
I'll try to keep it short.
You.
I'll do my best. Has the UN contacted any of the rebel groups on the ground, or have you been contacted by them? This is my first question. And does the UN plan to play any role in this political transition? If so, how? And there are already talks on whether the Syrian refugees should return, and how does the UN plan to get involved on the return of the Syrian refugees? And also, finally...
Well, let me, I have the memory of a goldfish, so let's take it a few at a time. What I can tell you is that there have been contacts with those in control of Damascus.
And who contacted?
Through Mr. Pedersen's office.
And have they
I'm not going to
reached
get
out?
into any further details, but there are operational contacts. Yeah.
And what kind of role does the UN
Well,
plan
I think,
to...
listen, I think all of that will need to be played. For the Secretary General's part, the UN's part, we want to see the best possible future for the Syrian people, one that they choose themselves, one that is inclusive, one is fully respective of the rights of minorities. So I think, I mean, as we know and as you know, the situation is moving very quickly. I think things will be hopefully clearer in the coming days.
And on the return of...
On the return of refugees, obviously it will, listen, refugees should be, people who want to return home should, wherever they are in the world, need to do so voluntarily, freely, and in full dignity. We have been present in Syria for a long time, and whether it's our UNHCR colleagues, our IOM colleagues, or other we will assist the Syrian people as they wish to return home in whatever way we can.
One final, if I may. Does the UN have any estimates about how much is it going to cost to rebuild the war-torn country? Any numbers?
Not at this time. Pam.
Thank you, Steph. A little variation on those series of questions. David Miliband this morning said, it remains to be seen whether the new reality will allow Syrians to start rebuilding their lives or whether an even graver crisis lies ahead. You said it's moving fast, but what is this, SG, what is your assessment of who's in charge?
Look, I think we are at an inflection point, right? Things have moved very quickly, frankly, let's be honest, quicker than any of us, and I think that would include most of you ever thought. So I think we need for clarity to be a bit more clear. But we all, I mean, from our part, I think I just told Betu what we want to see for the Syrian people, and the United Nations will be there to support them. Bassam, and then Margaret, then Michelle, and then...
I just asked my question, so maybe I'll follow up later.
Feel free to come in whenever you want. Margaret.
Have you been in contact with the Syrian mission here in New York? Has the
I'm not aware of any contacts that were had today with the Syrian mission in New York.
And then just on the OCHA, on the SURF fundraiser tomorrow, is there a target number that they're looking to reach?
Lots, but
Okay.
I will try to get you a better figure. Michelle.
Just a very quick follow-up on that. So no letters or anything from the Syrian mission
Not
notifying
that
the
not
UN
that I've
of
seen, no.
any change in...
No.
Okay.
Did you have
Yeah.
Yes,
and
please, go
then
ahead.
just any response to reports that some of the governments in Europe are now halting asylum claims from Syrians?
Look, asylum claims need to be dealt with according to the 1951 Refugee Convention. People have an inherent right to claim asylum, and they need to be dealt with and seen each individually on merit. Deji, and then...
Few follow-ups. First, on the Israelis' temporary defensive measure, which create buffer zones in Syria, I saw...
It didn't create a buffer.
It wants to.
Into the buffer. There is an existing buffer zone.
But they expanded
Right.
it anyway. So you said it will be a violation of 1974 disengagement agreement.
Yeah.
But actually many Arabic countries actually condemned Israel for violation of sovereignty. What's the position of the Secretary General on this?
I think I just I just said it and you just repeated it.
That's not from the Secretary General, right? That's
Well,
from the peacekeeping mission.
You know, I think my title is spokesperson for the Secretary General, so I'm.
Well,
It
UN
would,
condemn
yes,
it,
there's no daylight between
well,
UNDOF
Secretary
and the
General-
Secretary General. We think this would be a violation of the 1974 agreement, and agreements should not be violated. Your next question.
So the next, also a follow-up. Has the Secretary General have any plan to contact with the transitional government Prime Minister, Mr. Abashir?
Well, we've seen the reports of his appointment. I mean, I think we saw the reports just a few hours ago. As I said, I think I answered Beitul questions in terms of the contacts that are being had. If there's anything more,
No plan?
I will let you know. What I can tell you is that this morning the Secretary General spoke to both the Foreign Minister of Turkey. He also spoke to the Prime Minister of Qatar, Mohammed Al Thani. They had, I mean, two separate phone calls, right? But basically, with both those phone calls, Secretary General had conversations about the future of Syria, with the common objective of rebuilding Syria's institutions that are inclusive, that protect the rights of minorities, and the progressive restoration of Syria's territorial integrity. The Secretary General will continue to be on the phone, as well as his senior advisors, with key interlocutors on this file.
There's one issue here for the future in Syria, which is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is labeled as terrorist group.
Indeed, it is.
Do you, I mean, personally, I didn't see how this would play out, but from the Secretary General's point of view, how would this thing be solved? Would they be like delisted as terrorist group from the Security Council, or what kind of criteria?
I understand where you're getting at. Security Council will take whatever decisions Security Council makes. We have to deal with the immediate in the reality now. As in other places, we have contacts with de facto authorities for operational reasons within our mandate, right? That's permissible and acceptable, and is critical to us being able to fulfill the mandates that member states and even sometimes the Security Council themselves have given us. In terms of the longer term, they will need to be a rebuilding, as I said, of these Syrian institutions, so the Syrian people can choose their own leaders and can choose their own government and can live in a place where a government is protective of the diversity that we see in Syria, and that is inclusive.
But you didn't really answer the question. How are we solve the problem of a terrorist group?
I think I've answered the question to the best of my ability. The listing, the delisting, that's up to Security Council members. I think we're all eager to know what the future holds, but I think we have to take things one day at a time while keeping certain objectives, as I've just laid them out, as our goals. Jessica, then Frank, and then I'll come back. But your microphone, please, if you wish to speak.
I had the same question about the reclassification of HTS, but you've answered that at length now. Another question, just do you have any figures on the number of refugees returning to Syria? Any idea of how many are going from Lebanon, how many from Turkey? Any sort of gauge of that situation?
What I can tell you is that our UNHCR colleagues told us today that they're monitoring developments, they're engaging with refugee communities, and they're there. UNHCR is there to help support states and people who wish to organize voluntary returns. In terms of numbers, we don't have any yet. I think part of the reason is that, especially the situation at the Syrian-Lebanese border may be somewhat confusing, and in terms of we need to have people there to count as they come in. So I think those kinds of numbers should come up in the next few days. Frank.
Yeah, I wanted to get back to one of the earlier questions on the Syrian mission. What is it that the UN needs to receive from...
Sorry, put it a little louder.
Yeah, what is it that the UN needs to receive from the Syrian mission to recognize a new government? I guess recognition of it as a nation still is maintained, but as a new government, what do you need to get from the mission?
Well, listen, it's a bit of the hypothetical. I mean, Syria, regardless of what changes were made, Syria remains obviously a member state of this organization. Very often, when there is a change of government, there is a communication that comes in from a permanent mission to announce that change of government. So again, I mean, we're still. This is all very fresh. So let's see what the day brings. But as you know, it's just as a matter of course, it is up to the issue of who represents what state. That's of the credentials, question of credentials, if there is, that's an issue for member states themselves to decide. Sorry, Gabby, and then I'll go around.
Thanks, Steph. The process of being delisted as a terrorist organization has to go to a request has to go to the ombudsman first, as I understand it. To the best of your knowledge, has the ombudsman received any request for that?
I have not been informed. So to the best of my knowledge, no.
And you said that the UN has contacts with de facto authorities in many parts of the world or other countries other than Afghanistan. Which other ones come to mind?
Well, I mean, we had contact with the de facto authorities in Gaza as well, but there are other places around the world.
And one last follow-up, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Does the Secretary General think Assad should be held accountable for the crimes committed during his reign?
Okay. I think the violations of human rights in Syria have been well documented by various independent commissions. Anyone involved in the commissioning of these violations needs to be held to account, without a doubt. Linda, and then we'll go. Vitul, you have to wait a second.
Thank you, Steph. Apropos of the comings and goings into and out of Syria, you mentioned refugees are returning, they're displaced, 1 million, mainly women and children are displaced. Are there any numbers, or how prevalent is the outflow, particularly of minority groups?
As I said, I don't have any numbers at this point because I think the situation has evolved so quickly. We're just not able to tabulate those numbers at this point. Okay, Carrie.
Thanks, Steph. How many people do you have in Syria right now? You said you have your resident coordinators, that the needs will increase by the day, but how many people do you have?
About 1,800 UN staff in Syria.
And out of the 1,800, what's the proportion?
Your microphone.
Sorry.
A small proportion is international.
So the rest of it is
some
Syrian.
internationals have stayed. Others may be relocating. But 1,800 people in Syria, and we continue to work.
Sorry, just to have an idea, how many staff did you have like 10 years ago?
That is beyond my goldfish memory. I will have to check.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Yes, please. Go ahead.
So you just mentioned that Syria is a member state. So if the HTS takes over the authority of Syria, will the United Nations recognize this new government, and will Syria still remain as the member state?
Look, we're getting into a lot of hypotheticals here. The issue of recognizing government is an issue for member states. The issue of questioning credentials of people who want to represent is an issue for member states. So I'm not going to get. Let's see what tomorrow and the day after brings. But in general, we will be guided by the positions and decisions, if any, taken by the competent, intergovernmental bodies of the UN on this issue. Madame.
Thank you, Steph. Inam Tahan, Associate Press. The question is about a few days ago, Julani had an interview with the Al Arabiya, and he said, when Syria receives its stability, he no longer will remain in his role right now, considering that United Nations consider him as a terrorist, or because he already joined Al-Qaeda. The question is, after attacking the central bank in Syria, and most of these rebels took the money out of the bank, and he helped partial of the money to go back to the bank.
What is the question?
The question is the United Nations helping to protect the facilities of the Syrian and their properties? And also the second question, the Prime Minister right now, he's ruling the Syrian facilities, and under the control of the rebels and Al-Julani. Is he dealing with the envoy, or is he dealing with any group of the United Nations?
Let's go back. I think somebody asked a question about the reports of a newly appointed prime minister. We just saw these reports like you about an hour ago. I'm not aware of any contact on that front. Do we have the capacity and the mandate to physically protect institutions in Damascus? We don't. Right? It is, as in any place in the world, it is the responsibility of those in charge to protect the institutions, to protect the common goods of a people's. So that's just our general position. Tony, then Stefano. Did you have a question, Tony? No. Okay. Sinan, then Stefano. Yeah.
Thank you, Steph. I have a couple of confirmation questions and also follow-ups. So, Mr. Gay Pedersen is in touch with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham.
No, that's not what I said. I said there are contacts established through his office.
Is he in touch with the Syrian Democratic Forces at all about the?
Mr. Pedersen, either directly or through his office, remain in touch with all key interlocutors and players on the Syrian file.
And the last one, you said the Secretary General was on the phone with the Turkish Foreign Minister, and I wonder if they talk about the latest clashes between Kurdish forces and the Turkish-backed armed groups.
I don't know if they spoke about the specific operations in detail, but as I said, they spoke about rebuilding of Syrian institutions, inclusive, protecting of the rights of minorities, and the progressive restoration of Syria's territorial integrity. Stefano.
Thank you, Stefan. One question was already asked, but I have another one. Did the Secretary General call the Foreign Minister of Turkey, or was vice versa?
He called him.
He called.
I understand. Yeah.
So it looks like that he has been calling the Turkish government frequently on this crisis. Of
Twice.
course, yes. Before any other government.
Well, he spoke to the Qatari Prime Minister as well.
So the question is, when he spoke last week with President Erdogan, did Erdogan told him that Damascus will be, that basically will be over very soon, and that those forces was pointing to Damascus like he did a few hours later?
Yeah, I think, Stefano, I think that is a fantastic question to ask the spokesperson for the president of Turkey. Okay, I'm going to go to the screen because I think our friend Mike has been waiting. Mike?
Very good Monday to you. I'm sorry if I missed it while you were discussing UNDOF. There was a Israeli claim over the weekend that Israeli forces teamed with UNDOF forces to repel a rebel attack. Can you speak to the veracity of that claim?
Look, what I can tell you is that there was an attack on December 7th where armed individuals climbed the wall of a UN position near Hadar. It's position 10A, for those of you who have a map. Following an exchange of fire with UN peacekeepers who were protecting the position, the base was partially looted. There were no casualties. And later that same day, UNDOF personnel engaged with leaders of the local community and recovered a number of the looted items, including a number of the weapons and ammunition that had been taken. As far as UNDOF is concerned, they have no information about the IDF allegedly engaging with these armed people.
Okay. Second question. The Secretary General released a tweet, or possibly a statement yesterday, mentioning the fall of the dictatorial regime, which was quite stark. He doesn't speak that way. He embraces, literally bear hugs Lukashenko. He is quite chummy in public appearances with the Iranian dictatorial regime.
I will answer your question without agreeing to your characterization, but go ahead.
I mean, it's there on video.
Okay, but what is the question?
Is he suddenly speaking out against dictatorial regimes?
I think he was just stating a fact. Okay.
Is he calling for the fall of other dictatorial regimes?
What he is calling for is for every member state to respect the ideals that are embodied in the Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that they all signed on to. Bisan.
Thank you, Steph.
As we are seeing all of this footage of prisoners being released from prisons, especially Saidnaya, and apparently there are floors and floors that are underground and people are trying to get people out. Are there any UN officials planning on visiting Saidnaya or any of the other prisons and talking to prisoners who have been freed?
I think it's hard not to be moved to the core by the images that we've seen of prisoners being released, including women with children being released from these prisons. I think once calm returns and access is free, I have no doubt that representatives of whether it's UN, the Human Rights Council, or Human Rights Office, or the various commissions that exist on Syria will do their utmost to investigate. And, you know, there are thousands and thousands of people that are still missing in Syria. And we very much hope that the families of those people will finally get some answers to where the whereabouts of their loved ones. Betul.
Thanks, Steph. Again, on Syria, given the examples we have on the regime changes like in Iraq or Afghanistan and how chaotic it was, after the regime fell, are you concerned about a possible division in Syria?
Of course. I mean, I think we are at a moment of both of great opportunity and great risk, right? And one of the messages the Secretary General, as I mentioned a number of times in his conversations, is for the progressive return of the territorial integrity of Syria, right? And to rebuild those Syrian institutions to serve the Syrian people, right? Not to serve any government, to serve the Syrian people. And the international community has to do whatever they can to all work in unison towards that goal. Before I come back, Iftikhar has been waving his hand and I finally see him. Iftikhar.
Thank you, Steph. All questions on Syria has been asked, but one point, does the UN have information about large number of foreign nationals working in Syria and their safety?
Well, I don't have any particular information, but I can tell you that those who are in charge in Damascus and other parts in the country have a responsibility to ensure that everyone is kept safe, not only Syrians, but foreigners who wish to leave. Edie, and then I'll go back.
Thank you, Steph. A couple of follow-ups. First, does Mr. Peterson have any plans to travel to Damascus?
I don't know as of yet. I think we may get a bit more information from Mr. Peterson tomorrow.
Is there any chance of getting a better readout of the Secretary General's calls with the Turkish foreign minister?
Are you saying my readout was subpar?
Yes, because it didn't say what the response, give any indication of whether this was a beginning. Is he planning to contact other leaders?
Yes, he will be. I mean, I can expect the Secretary General to be on the phone with others in the coming days.
On these same issues of,
On Syria, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
he's,
but I mean on the issues of representation.
yeah.
Okay, and a follow-up on Gaza. Has any food gotten into northern Gaza anytime recently?
Not to the best of my memory, but I will check for you. Yes, please.
Hi, Steph. For those who been released, is the UN having a legit list of the names of all these people that been released? Remember, like most of these prisoners, they've been in prison for years, and none of their families are in the same place. How these people can get together using a legit site so they can reach each other?
We do not have a list because I think as you saw, the prison doors were open in a rather chaotic way, and I think it's wonderful that these people who'd been held as prisoners, often in a manner that defies vocabulary in terms of the horror, were able to be free. Again, I think as we progress, we will be there to assist in whatever way we can to reunite families, but things are going to take a little bit of time. Sorry?
Is there an organization on the ground?
Well, I mean, first of all,
helping?
in terms of family reunification, the ICRC is usually the one who does it, but we will help in whatever way we can. Thank you all. Hasta mañana.